Welcome, everybody, to the House of Hustle podcast here on Sports Radio 810. We're presented by Charlie Hustle. It is me, Jarrett Sutton, and it's my co-host, Steven St. John. That's really weird to say. But we are here presenting the Charlie Hustle House of Hustle podcast. We're going to dive into everything basketball. It is a nonstop shop of basketball. We're going to talk college basketball, NBA, high school, women's basketball, you name it. We're going to cover it. Steven, how fired up are you? I'm pretty excited for this.
I'm very fired up. Not for this episode, but I already booked our first guest. I already booked Sophie Cunningham.
Boom. Good.
Good. I asked her on the air, and she said yes.
Perfect.
And so at some point, we're going to have Sophie Cunningham on this podcast. So I'm really excited. And I know you got your name in lights.
I know.
This
Jarrett Sutton. I was not expecting that.
What would Ellen and Dell Sutton, your parents, say about this? They'd be very excited, wouldn't they?
They'd be pretty excited, yeah. Okay. Like I came out, it was like, wait, I'm used to like you. I think you would make the actual cut here. It's like to have my name.
No, this is what I want.
Throwing me off here.
Two things I want here. At some point in this podcast, I want Dell Sutton to sing.
That's happening
and
for sure.
And I think we should have like a theme song where he sings, like an '80s kind of sitcom TV song,
kind of like some intro music too.
House of Hustle, and just sings about basketball.
Yep.
And then I want Ellen to bring in Breakfast Casserole. Which
that's got to happen
for 2 years, and that
still
for some reason doesn't happen ever again.
Yep.
And so so basically, I want you to tell people about you and about your background with basketball, because like you said, this podcast is going to be all basketball, whether it's NBA, whether it's college, Big 12, SEC, high school, women's basketball. We might throw some youth basketball in there, AAU, whatever. We're not going to be confined by anything. We're going to talk basketball, and it's going to be designed for people that love basketball. So let's get your background, because you're the perfect person to have a basketball podcast. You played high school basketball, Oak Park, and then obviously you go to Mizzou, you walk on at Mizzou and become a player at the University of Missouri, and now you work in the NBA. So I've kind of given the tent poles there of your background in basketball. Take us through Jarrett Sutton and your life in basketball, which has led to your name in lights right here at the Sports Radio 810 podcast studio.
Well, so we're both Northlanders, so got to throw that out there. That's really the connection here. But yeah,
the only reason I'm doing this podcast.
So went to Oak Park. 2007 I graduated. Played college or high school basketball at Oak Park, and then also played for the Kansas City Pumas back in the day. They're now the Pacers.
So that was that like an AAU?
It was an AAU. It was a startup AAU program. Actually,
throw some other names. Who were some other Pumas that we might remember? Anyone?
Let's see. So Landry Shamet would be the first name that's at the top of the list. Yeah, and actually it's kind of crazy because I saw Landry as a middle school kid, and I knew he was really talented, and that was when I was a junior in high school playing, and we would always practice out in Riverside by Argosy Casino.
Yeah,
and so that's really kind of. It's interesting to look back on that, because now as a scout and a talent evaluator, I start to look at qualities of players that are I see a lot of high school players at the McDonald's All-American game, Jordan Brand Classic, all these high school events that I go to. Peach Jam is a big one with the EYBL. And I'm like having flashbacks to when I was playing as an AAU player, seeing Landry Shamet, knowing that he was going to be really good. But and then sure enough, he goes to Wichita State, and now he's a pro and all the whole bit.
Like he was, not everyone knew that's this future NBA player.
Right.
Because he wasn't, he went to Wichita State. There's a lot of schools that missed on him.
Correct. Right? Well, and I would say a lot of AAU programs, right? Because AAU programs recruit, and there wasn't the Mocans knocking on the door or anything like that. And he had a great connection with our coach and contact that was our shooting instructor that kind of recruited him a little bit. He went to Park Hill, obviously, so there was that tie-in to just the Northland. And as I've always said, there's a lot of really good talent that comes out of Kansas City. I think sometimes gets missed. Ochai Agbaji would be one of those as well. Given that to the Oak Park. Got to get the badge of honor for Oak Park, but yeah, so finished playing ball at Oak Park, and I was an all-state player, but I wasn't a great athlete. I was a shooter. I came from a program that was very old school. Our high school coach was very much a disciplinarian, very tough-minded.
What was your coach's name?
Fred Turner.
Fred Turner.
Coach T. Learned so much from him, though, and I really needed Coach Turner when I was a freshman, growing up and developing as a player and developing as a person. He really shined a light on just... I think I was a little soft when I got to high school, and I wasn't soft by the time I left high school. And not to say Coach A didn't really value shooting, but it was very different of just how we played. Our games were kind of like Big X basketball games, right? The games were low scoring, a lot of delay, but our defense was always tough, and he taught me to play defense because if I didn't defend, I didn't play. So there was lots to learn from Coach T, and I left high school, and I got a lot of Division II offers. That was pretty much my realm of offers. I had a small Division I offer. My biggest offer really was to Arkansas Little Rock. That was kind of my biggest offer, I would say. Didn't go on a visit. I was very naive, I think, in high school of just not really going around and seeing colleges.
So were you just not interested in Arkansas Little Rock?
I wasn't, and both my brothers had gone to Mizzou, so Mizzou was kind of all I knew.
So you were a big Mizzou fan?
Yeah, well, I was a big college basketball fan growing up.
Right.
And then as I got older and my brothers went to Mizzou, Kareem Rush came into my life, right, when he was at Pembroke Hill, right? And I went to see him at the William Jewell Classic. And that's really when I was like, wait a second, like I'm really drawn to this guy because he's so good, and I knew he was going to be an NBA player, and it was like my first like moment of seeing what I knew was going to be an NBA player at that moment. And everybody knew about Jaron, so with Kareem, I followed him to Mizzou, and that's really what sparked like watching those Mizzou teams with
Quinn Snyder,
with Coach Q and Clarence Gilbert, Ricky Paulding, all those guys, Trayvon Bryant, who now is a coach and doing his own thing now in the NBA, which is really cool to watch. But that's when I really fell in love with Mizzou, and I always was kind of thinking about the walk-on process, but my parents were very much like, hey, as parents would, like, you got an opportunity to go play at Northwest Missouri State or Washburn. You should go look into that. I went and tried out and played really well, too. Like, I would go play in scrimmages against, like, some of the players that they had, and they had open scrimmages. I don't even think you can do that now, but I played really well. So I knew I could play at the Division II level. And I went back and forth, and I thought, well, if I'm playing really well in these scrimmages and I'm shooting the ball really well and I can translate right away, it gave me so much confidence to where I'm like, well, look, I think I can go walk on at Mizzou, which is very naive, right? Like I didn't have any offers. I had highlight tapes like most kids make. But when I went to Columbia, my whole thought was I didn't know the coaches, and I was just going to try to make it in the walk-on process, which now I don't know if they still do it, but back then you had to have an open tryout for walk-ons, and most times coaches didn't take walk-ons. And for me, I was training at the Student Rec Center. I was running sprints in the morning. I was getting up early before class.
You enrolled at Mizzou. You already went to Mizzou.
Yeah, enrolled at Mizzou. I was just going to go down there. I had buddies that went to Mizzou. And so I enroll, I start classes, and my whole process is I'm going to walk on. And I was going to the Student Rec Center, running sprints, playing pickup, doing everything I can every day to try to get ready for the walk-on tryout. And a walk-on tryout is just one day. It's a 2-hour workout. And so I'm training before that, and Mike Anderson and his coaches are playing pickup, and Coach A played in college, and at this point, like, Coach A was in shape, could still play, very competitive, and he was playing twice a week at the rec center with professors. They had a professor's run, so it was different. I had actually had a professor that was a teacher of mine that played in this run. There was a minister in town that came and played. It was really fun, but they needed the day that I got in this pickup run. It was about 7:30 in the morning, and I was running sprints on the side, and I was doing some light shooting before I had an 8:30 class. And they needed an extra. They had 9, and they needed a 10th. And Jeff Daniels, who was the director of basketball operations at the time, just ran over to my side and said, hey, will you jump in? And I see Coach A, and I see some other, TJ Cleveland was there, Jeff Daniels was there. So I jump in the actual pickup game. I actually missed my class that day because I'm like, look, Coach A is playing in this. I need to be playing right now. Right. I need to get in this. So I start playing up and down. I think I hit like 6 or 7 threes in this pickup run.
Were you on his team against?
No, we played against each other. And that ended up being how it went for about 4 to 5 weeks, where he guarded me, I guarded him. And the walk-on tryout was in like late October.
And this is Mike Anderson, the head coach of Mizzou, is guarding you.
And I knew who he was, and of course he didn't know me at all. But I didn't want to. I knew it was just. I wanted to get up and down and just let him know that I was a player, and it was an opportunity for me to prove myself over the course of time instead of just going to a walk-on tryout where anybody and everybody's there, and you get one shot, and it's a couple hours. You never know how it's going to go.
Right. You're trying to plant the seed instead. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little bit strategic of like, I know Coach A is playing in this pickup run. They want me to play. Maybe they'll ask me to come back if I play well and just, give to the pickup run. And obviously every pickup run's different, right? I didn't want to be overly competitive. I didn't want to be the guy that they're like, no, we can't have this guy come back. So by the end of that first pickup run, I played really well. Me and Coach A competed against each other. And then as I'm taking off my shoes, I'm getting ready to run back to the shower. Jeff Daniels stops me and says, are you going to come back? And like, we play on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
So is he the Dobo? Or what
he's the Dobo. He's the Dobo.
TJ Cleveland was an assistant.
He was an
coach.
assistant.
Okay.
Yep. So, and then our strength coach, David Dietz, also played as well.
By the way, Dobo, Director of Basketball Operations. That's basketball lingo. You're here on House of Hustle.
That would be Steven's role if he could. I mean, if he could be a Dobo.
I'd like to be. I'm the Dobo I was the Dobo for St. Gabe's, and now I'm the head coach. Which is
you've been promoted. That's a big. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. So the long story short of this, though, is I'm at Mizzou. I didn't know how this was going to go in terms of making the team. Because obviously I was just playing pickup games, and I didn't know what that would. Me and Coach A got into some battles in terms of competitive games. We play for an hour and a half, but really when I knew that I had earned his respect, there was this moment that sticks out in time, and he confirmed this. This is probably 2 weeks leading up to the walk-on tryout. We've been playing pickup for about a month. I've gotten to know the guys pretty well. I've gotten to know Coach A little bit, but he's pretty tough to read, which I loved. He was very tough. He was very hard to read.
You got a guy like a Jarrett Sutton.
I got to get that Barry, Yeah. That's his line. But there was a play where I was driving the ball. I got a rebound off a missed shot, and I forced him to take a bad shot. And I'm kind of weaving in and out of traffic. Game point on the line, by the way. And I go in to shoot this layup. And Coach A's strong. Like, he is physical. And he gives me an absolute elbow to my ribs. And I went flying. Yeah. Like, I went off the court onto my back and slid onto the other court. And if you know the Mizzou Rec Center, like, the courts are right next to each other.
Right.
So he basically throws me midair, knocks me down. I don't think I made the bucket. It was like it's game point. So he's like old school. And I didn't call a foul. I didn't call it.
It was a foul.
Of course, the professors called it, and they got into a big argument. I didn't say a word. I got up. I went right to my spot on the block because I was a shooter and I'd come off pin downs. And he put his fist out and gave me like some knuckles and like slapped me on the butt. And like I think he respected that. I didn't flinch. They didn't make a call. Yeah. I just got up and I went back. And I thought at that point, like, I think Coach A, there's a connection here. Like, because I loved how hard he played, and he was good. I mean, he was really good. He gave me some business too, like putting me on the block, post ups, baby hooks over the top of me. Like, he was really good. And I think there was just a mutual respect. It was very competitive. And it was the week before the walk-on tryout where Jeff Daniels said, hey, there's a walk-on tryout coming up. Are you planning to walk on? And I said, yeah, I was. And he goes, well, I think you should. And at that point, I think I have a really good chance.
So how many people show up to this walk-on trying to get on the team?
So it's like a high school tryout where there are guys. There was an exchange student that was from China that was a part of the walk-on tryout. Couldn't dribble a ball. That was, like there's those type of guys that jump on this walk-on tryout because they don't really understand.
So anyone can try out.
Anybody can try out, but you have to go through extensive paperwork. You have to take a physical.
You got to be a student.
You got to, there's a lot of things that go into You got to have all your paperwork in at a certain time.
But you don't have to dribble, apparently. You don't have to know how to dribble.
But he actually was a part of we had to do a 3-man weave, and I got stuck with this guy. And we couldn't even complete the 3-man weave because he couldn't do it. So there's just those things, like the factors that you can't control that are part of a walk-on tryout. And I actually didn't play well in the walk-on tryout. I didn't shoot the ball that well. One-on-one, there was a guy that was a really good player out of St. Louis that actually was really, really good, and he played better than me in the walk-on tryout, to be completely honest. But
did they say how many they were taking?
I didn't think they were going to take anybody. They didn't take anybody the year prior.
So they didn't have to take anybody.
But Nick Berardini, who was the walk-on prior to me, had left, and so they had an open spot. But I didn't think they would fill it. I didn't know if they were going to be at a full roster. I wasn't thinking too far ahead. I was focused on the tryout. I felt that if I was good enough, Coach A was going to give me a shot. But the reality was, after the walk-on tryout got completed, I really didn't think I had done enough to earn the spot. I really think I made the team because of all the time that was spent at the rec center.
So how did they tell you then?
So it was about 4 days after the walk-on tryout, and Kim English, Lawrence Bowers, Marcus Denman, DeMarre Carroll were all at the walk-on tryout. So there was a little bit of that, like, the current guys are there. There was it was stressful.
Did they have say in it though?
They don't have say in it. The players did, but they wanted to. They
wanted to see. Yeah.
After the fact, Lawrence said that Coach A had told them about me,
right.
and they were coming actually to watch me. They were there to see everybody, but Coach A had told them, "There's this kid that I think we're going to take, and Adam, and he's going to come to the walk-on tryout. I want you guys to check him out." So after they had a workout, and then we practiced after that. We had the walk-on tryout after their workout, and they stayed around, and I didn't play that well, and After about 3 days, I had not received a call, and I thought, oh, man, I don't think I had made it. And then TJ Cleveland called and said, we want you to come and practice with us. We don't know if we're keeping anybody, but we want you to come for 2 practices. And so I came first practice. It was a Saturday. I come to Mizzou Arena, and I meet with the equipment guy. He gets me my practice jersey also, but I don't have a locker. I don't like. They're just
nervous?
Like,
I was scared.
Oh, it was the most terrifying experience. I mean, looking back, I'm like, I remember just the feeling going into that practice of like, oh my God. I mean, I've gotten to the step I wanted to get to. It's still not finalized yet if I'm going to actually make this team. And so I go to the practice, and the practice is like a legit. You know, they're working out. Like they're doing 3-on-3 full court. They're doing 5-on-5 stuff. They're teaching different things. Guards, forwards. I was with the guards. I don't know a soul. Like, I'm behind Marcus Denman in 1-on-1 drills. But Coach A did a drill early on in practice that I knew was going to be the drill that like tested if I was going to make it. I had to guard DeMarre Carroll in a 1-on-1 full court.
Junkyard dog,
NBA player. And he just wanted to see how I'd react. So he goes, Jarrett, get in there, guard DeMarre. And it was 1-on-1 full court. Because we played, obviously, we were fast-paced, fastest 40. So our drills in practice were like full speed, full court.
And you got to guard him.
And I got to guard him. And I the thing about it, though, Steven, was like, I had run so many sprints. Like, I conditioned so hard. And that still wasn't enough to even translate to what it was like to practice with Mizzou those first 2 days. I was so unbelievably sore after those first 2 days with the amount of running, and like it's just a different world. It's different than high school. And my high school practices were 3.5 hours, and we would run sprints all the time. So to translate that to guarding DeMarre Carroll was just such a huge out-of-body experience because it was a different challenge. And it just goes to show you, like, going from high school to college is such a massive jump. So I'm guarding DeMarre Carroll, and he exposed the ball just a little bit. I think he thought he could just, like, rock me to sleep and, like, just attack me physically. Yeah. He exposed the ball. I deflected the ball just enough to where it kind of went away from him. And I thought, this is my shot. So I went full dive. And they hadn't had the bleachers out yet, so there was concrete. It was concrete to the wood. And I jumped. I didn't get the ball, but I dove off the floor. DeMarre is able to secure it. And I dove off the floor, got back up, got back in the play, and went and fouled him and didn't give him a layup. And all of it, like Kim English and Marcus and Zaire were like, that was big time. Like, you got back in the play, and they were kind of riled me up a little bit. So I felt like they were trying to welcome me a little bit. I think I earned a little respect. I think I earned some of DeMarre's respect too. I dove on the floor, and he had an easy layup. It's 1-on-1 full court, right. And then I got back in the play and fouled him, and didn't give up the layup is really what it came down to. I shot it well in that practice. That was the good thing. Is like for the first day, I just wanted to shoot the ball well because I knew that was my role, and I shot it really well. And then I had a second practice the next day. Monday was a day off. Still wasn't sure if I'd made the team, and then TJ said, "We're welcoming you. You're a part of the group. You've done a great job through the process." And kind of a welcome to the team thing. And, you'll show up tomorrow, first day of practice, be ready to go.
How many years were you on the team?
4 years, and earned a full ride scholarship after I was a walk-on, so after my first year. And, I mean, that 08-09 year is kind of back to your original comments about, like, high school to college to now working as a scout. that 08-09 year changed my life entirely. Like, I was a solid high school player. I played year-round basketball. Basketball was my thing. Played AAU, played fall ball, spring, year-round basketball. I didn't think I was going to be athletic enough, good enough. I mean, I knew I could shoot the ball, and I give a ton of credit to the coaches that I had that developed me into a shooter, because I was really big in middle school. I was a 4'5", but really I was a guard in high school. And I give my parents a lot of credit, too, for, really pushing me to pursue my dreams, because they knew I wanted to go play at Mizzou, and they knew I was stuck in between. I wanted to play, but I didn't really want to play at the Division II level. I wanted to go as far as I could. And if that meant sitting at the end of a bench and being on a great team, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Mizzou. I wanted the education piece of it, but I also wanted to try to play at the highest level I could play at. And I don't think I would have gotten there if it wasn't the support of my parents and pushing me to get to my goals and chasing those dreams. But 08-09, I make the team in the most crazy way possible. I mean, how to make the team from the rec center to making the team through the tryout to then 08-09, like, the year prior, there was the Stefan Hanna situation where off the floor turmoil. JT Tiller telling me it was the worst locker room, where the locker room was terrible. It was not a great environment. They had talent. Jason Horton, a part of those teams. Like Daryl Butterfield, like those teams. Geez. That was a team that had guys, but they had a lot of issues off the floor. 08-09, we go to the Elite Eight. We win a Big 12 championship in Oklahoma City. My freshman class is Steve Moore, Marcus Denman, Kim English, Lawrence Bowers, like guys that are best friends, brothers of mine. That part, but then also to like accomplish a goal that was a dream of mine. The amount of work that went into that, the amount of time, the sacrifices that went into that, like just. I don't want to like go back to the movie Rudy, because there's some scenes in Rudy that like
basketball Rudy
a little bit, but like I thought I was good enough to. You have to be good enough to play. So, but you have to have like an unselfishness to know you're there for a reason. That's to get guys better in practice, to make great grades, to like maintain. There's no distractions or maintenance with you. You're there to be a great team guy, to study the game, to be resources for coaches. To play as much as I played my freshman year, like I think I scored 21 points my freshman year as a walk-on. That's insane. Right. To get in a game, to make threes, to be a part of that group that won 31 games, and then to be a part of the most wins in school history, earn a full ride scholarship. All those memories are all stem back to the work ethic and everything that like was taught to me in high school. And then Coach A giving me the opportunity and earning his trust and earning his respect. And that's helped me after college. That's how I got to being a scout, because I had to start from the ground level. I had to work in Santa Cruz, California for the Golden State Warriors, working in a hotel room or living in a hotel room of all things, working in the D League, not glamorous. I loved the game. Like I knew I wanted to evaluate talent when I went out to Santa Cruz. And I knew it was going to be a bear. Brian Scalabrine was the best, I think, in terms of like advice. Scal's now the color commentator of the Boston Celtics, the Mamba, if you will, the White Mamba. He's the guy that got me into scouting, because when I worked in the D League, there was a chance for me to go back to Santa Cruz for a second year, and he said, "Look, you're going to get stuck here. If you were smart, I think you should go back to Kansas City. You've done enough here. You've learned. Your ability to evaluate from a player personnel standpoint is very good. You need to start meeting people." And he already had some broadcast experience, and it was the launch of the SEC network in 2014. And Ben Arnett and Mizzou had contacted me and said, "Hey, would you want to do some broadcasting for the SEC?" I had no broadcast experience. I was a business major. I had a master's in education. I thought I was going to coach in high school. That was my path. And then, my path went in a different direction. I moved back from California, and this is my first year out of college, or second year out of college, and I start broadcasting games. And Scal was right, because I met so many people through the broadcast, and Coach A was so helpful because he introduced me to so many different coaches across the SEC, because he was at Arkansas. So I was meeting so many coaches through broadcast, and I was, part of the SEC network. I was the SEC Plus, so it was kind of the off-brand of the SEC, but it didn't matter because I was meeting so many people, and I was scouting on my own. I was doing player reports. I was sending them to all teams. I must have sent an email every week to every NBA team.
So you're just doing scouting reports on your own, nobody.
For nobody, for free.
And you're sending them out to people.
I'm trying to see who, because I didn't want to be the guy that was sending emails to these NBA contacts and executives saying, well, I want a job and I want to work in the NBA. Like, everybody wants a job in the NBA. I wanted to send work. I wanted them to see what I could do. I wanted to see them, because intel gathering and evaluation is a part of being a scout.
But you don't know if they're going to look at it. You had the right context,
I don't even know.
Maybe?
I had the right. I started to build context, and I didn't know what they wanted to see. Like, it's not like a playbook of like, this is step A and step B and step C. Like, you just got to throw yourself in the fire and figure it out. And there's no hand holding. And
so who bit? Who returned your email? Or who
I got a lot of. So I think long story short, Gar Forman, who ran the Bulls, was like the first general manager that responded back to me and gave me like a quick response of like, this is really good work, keep it up. And it was very like dry. It was very, very short.
But just to get a GM to respond, that's
correct.
a big deal. You never know.
Correct. There was a lot of director of player personnel guys that were around. Matt Bolero, who ran the Bucks, he's an agent now, but he was a director of scouting with the Bucks. He was with the Timberwolves at the time. I was sending him a lot of work, trying to just get some insight of what he was looking for, and if these projects did they matter? Were they valuable? Gary Sachs is a mentor of mine. He was an assistant GM with the LA Clippers for years, and now he's working in Charlotte. He's their director of pro personnel. He was probably my biggest confidant because I was sending him work and he was actually using it. And he would tell me like, hey, this stuff is great. Please keep sending it us. I'll keep you in mind if we have anything. And so it started to build. And then I started making connections through all these contacts. And I would fly every spring during the combine. And this is kind of crazy. I spent my own money and I would fly to Chicago and I would wait in the hotel I knew the hotel of where all teams were.
Tell you, this is very stalkerish.
This is very stalkerish. No question.
Waiting in the hotel.
But I knew, I was like, I had heard stories of like, you can meet people at the combine and you can meet them in the hotel briefly and just introduce yourself face to face.
Are the guys like hanging around?
So I would send reports leading into the combine, and I would leave it as, I'm going to be in Chicago at the combine. Would love to meet you. Would love to grab a coffee with you. And it slowly worked, and that's how I met Trajan Langdon, who is my boss, who's the general manager of the New Orleans Pelicans. But I met him when he was in Brooklyn as the assistant general manager, and we built a relationship. He was, I think, happy with the work I was doing and very, grateful of just sending him some things that I think were valuable. And especially being here in Kansas City with the relationships to Kansas, to Mizzou, to Creighton.
It's a great hub for college basketball.
It's a great hub for college basketball. And he's like, if you're in New York ever, I'd love for you to come by the practice facili. And I'm
going to be in New York this weekend.
Exactly. So long story short, there was a project I was working on, and actually it was a job that I had sent me to New York. I was doing some sales work.
Legitimately?
I go to New York,
okay.
And I told Trajan, I'm like, look, I'm going to be in New York. If you're in town or if you're in your office, I'd love to swing by and just kind of meet you face to face again and show you some of the work I've done. He's like, absolutely. You should swing by. So I go to Brooklyn and I go suit and tie. I go like it's an interview, which it wasn't an interview. He just wanted me to come by and show me around, show me the practice facility, whatever. So I go full suit. I print off probably 200 pages of work that I had done over the year. It was basically like a portfolio of scouting reports, intel reports. I had a free agency report in there of like cap numbers. I had some analytics work that I did, and I was like, I'm going for it. I'm gonna get in front of this guy. And I go and I meet Trajan at his office. He shows me around. We sit down. I just basically am like, look, I just wanted to bring this. If you want it, this is some of the work I've done over the years. And he takes it and opens it up, and we don't talk for like 20 to 30 minutes. And he's just reading all this stuff, and he's putting documents everywhere. And he goes, I really don't know how you haven't been picked up yet as a Midwest scout. And he goes, I'll just tell you if we have something, I'll let you know. I really mean that, but you should keep trying to do this because you're a great talent evaluator. You know what this job entails. Clearly, you're very thorough. Your work ethic is speaks for itself. Let's stay in touch. Keep and it was like that moment of like, it was like goes back to the rec center of Coach A testing me. I think Trajan tested me in a lot of ways. And obviously Trajan was an incredible player himself, Duke legend, Alaskan assassin, really a part of Coach K's great teams at Duke in the late 90s. He's a hero
and
in Durham.
Thinking, this guy showed up in New York. You're ever in New York sometime and you're there, it's like, but seriously, it showed something. It might have scared some people, but
exactly. Right? But I think I had a good balance of not being too aggressive because obviously now in my role, I hear from a lot of, and I try to help and give back now as much as I can. If there's someone that's interested in scouting and, there's GAs that are out there. You're not looking for
anyone showing up in your hotel.
Right. There's a line. There's a line. And you got to have a feel, right? You got to have a feel and understanding of like how to meet people, how to build, because having relationships is a huge part of the job. It really is. And that is,
let me tell you,
Project One.
I'm good with this because that sounds like me trying to get in the radio.
Yeah.
Showing up places.
Yeah.
Hey, stop by sometime. Okay, I'll be there tomorrow. And just really stalkerish.
Yeah.
Because you want to do something and you're not going to let anyone stop you.
Right.
And then you think, am I doing too much or am I not doing enough? And you don't know.
Right.
But you went after it and you got it.
But back to like how you got to where you are in your career. It all goes back to your passion, right? It all goes back to like
and the support that your family gives you to believe in you.
Exactly. And having to, when I was 21 and even going back to when I was 17, 18 years old, like waiting tables and like having to take on some jobs that probably weren't like jobs I wanted to do.
Where do you wait tables at, by the way?
Let's see. Where was it? It was at Zona Rosa.
Oh, really?
The Italian. Why can't I think of the name of Bravo?
You were at Bravo?
I was at Bravo. Yeah.
How long were you at Bravo?
About a year and a half.
Really?
I think it was.
You were a year and a half at Bravo?
A year and a half at Bravo. Great. Yeah, it was. I was waiting tables, trying to make some. Then I was a lifeguard. I was a lifeguard after that, which.
Where were you a lifeguard at?
Northland, God, it was like back in like the Chapel Hill area.
You save anybody?
One time I did. Yeah.
You're out there waiting tables, saving lives, trying to make it in basketball.
Trying to get to my goal of reaching a job as a.
Why did I not know about Bravo for your name? I've lived next to Zona Rosa for damn near over 2 decades. I've been over there ordering from you.
But Stephen, going back to my Mizzou days, 2012 Big 12 tournament, Kansas City. There was the assistant GM of the Golden State Warriors that was sitting next to me before we played in the Big 12 semifinal. And his name was Kirk Lacob, who's still the assistant GM. His dad, Joe Lacob, runs the team. Didn't know who he was. When I was in that moment, I wanted to coach and teach. Both my parents were teachers. I was getting my master's in education. I thought I was going to teach. That was my thing. And I meet him, and during the course of my time with Coach A, and I give Coach A a ton of credit, I would study film even as a walk-on. I would watch a ton of film of our team, of other teams, because with my role in 2012, our scout team, I was the top shooter of every team in our scout team. So when Coach Haith was so good about preparation, where I would be on scout team and I would be the shooter, and we would give our varsity squad a look. We would give Phil and Kim and Marcus, and usually Marcus and Kim were guarding me all the time, which having all Americans guard you learn a lot about yourself and how to fight through some things. And they were such elite players, but I had to play a role, and that role was not glamorous. I absolutely loved my role. And we won, and everybody prospered because everybody embraced their role and enhanced their role. They wanted to give to the team, and that's why we were so good. As a scout, you're behind the scenes, which is exactly what my role was at Mizzou. I was completely behind the scenes.
So you brought up that Big 12 tournament. Do you remember when we first met?
That's exactly where we first met. I think it was the next day we met.
So this is a great story I remember, and I'll find this picture. But it was you guys were playing Baylor in the Big 12 championship game. We had really good seats next to the tunnel where you guys go in and out, right?
Yep.
And we had Kim English on the show a couple of times, so I'd kind of struck up a friendship with him. And I had Richie and Phil. So this is 2012.
Yeah.
So 10 years ago. So then Phil would have been 9, and Richie would have been 15.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and Susan was there, and we didn't take the girls because they were too young, and so I think they were there with probably with my dad then. And so we're there at the game. Mizzou beats Baylor. It's awesome. The streamers and everything coming from the rafters, and so you guys are walking off after the celebration, and you guys had Big 12 tournament T-shirts, right?
Oh, special.
And so we're leaning over, and I yell over. I said, Kim, and it's and Kim English comes over with the T-shirt, and I kind of lean back with Richie and Phil, and Susan takes a picture of us leaning back in the tunnel, and Kim English holding up the Big 12 T-shirt, tournament T-shirt, and then he gives the T-shirt to Richie and Phil. Like, how cool is that, right?
Yeah.
But then you're over there, and you just go, hey, whatever, Stephen St. John, and you come over, and we start talking. Do you remember that?
Absolutely. I remember because we were, like, trying to get off the floor.
Yeah.
And I remember Kim giving the boys the shirt.
Yeah.
I definitely remember that. And you were kind of, there were so many, I mean, it was mass chaos of Mizzou
crazy,
fans. It was
right?
nuts. And I just remember you kind of leaning in between people, and we kind of, like, high-fived each other, and I, like, jumped up, and I, like, said something to you. And then, we went back. But, like, that oh, my gosh, those are just incredible memories.
I've been listening to you since I was a little kid.
I mean, my whole family's Pro 810, right? They're listening all day to 810.
No, but what that was the first. So that was the first memory I have of you.
Yeah.
I mean, meeting you, obviously.
Yep.
And so hey, we've been talking about your background in basketball, and we'll get to some other things as we go on with each episode, and how you're an NBA scout now with the New Orleans Pelicans. So we'll kind of save that for the next episode, and how you made that jump, and how now you're with scout with the New Orleans Pelicans, and you're living your dream and living life as an NBA scout. And so, what's your official? You're Midwest scout.
Midwest scout. It's a college scout. So,
right.
Like title wise, it's college scout, but I cover Midwest region, mostly Big 10, Big 12, are usually my top two leagues I follow. Valley obviously is I cover that as well. So, but I try to see everybody. At the end of the day, I'm going to see all prospects.
You go to all these games.
Yeah.
This is what you do, man.
Yep.
You're living your dream, and so this is crazy. So before we run out of time for our first episode, we got to talk about Missouri and Kansas because they're playing tomorrow. You're not going to the Missouri-Kansas game.
I know, right? It's tough. This is part of
scout. Oklahoma and Arkansas. Now, how did that happen?
So, being in the Midwest, being in Kansas City, I see Mizzou and Kansas all the time. So it's tough. I'm fortunate enough I get to put a schedule of games together. I see Kansas right away. Usually I see Mizzou right away. I have Kansas.
So you put the schedule together?
I put
let me go to this Missouri Kansas game.
But then I submit that, and then our front office, Bryson Graham, who runs our college department, he always is like wanting me to see as much as possible, right. And he has a great feel of like certain games that are maybe better games for me to see some guys. And so I'm going to see Arkansas, who's another team in obviously my region, just a short drive from KC and in the SEC. So seeing them against Oklahoma, Big 12 team that I want to see as well. So it's in Tulsa, so it's an easy drive.
It's not the same time, so you'll be able to watch.
It's not the same time, so I'll be able to watch Mizzou, Kansas. But I wish I was there. I was at Mizzou, Kansas last year in Allen Fieldhouse for that one. We won't go there. We won't go there. That was an experience.
Okay, so now we get to see. This is going to be so interesting about this Missouri Kansas game.
Yeah.
Like, I try to watch as much as I can. I'm still in football mode.
Yep.
But I'm watching this Missouri team. It's hard to figure out all the new roster.
Right.
There's only 3 players from last year, new coaching staff and everything else. They've had a very light schedule, let's just be honest, except for the game at Wichita State. We know Kansas is good. They lost plenty for the national championship team, but that's a top 10 team with a Hall of Fame coach. We know they're good.
Yep.
Is Missouri? What is Missouri? Like, what do you expect for people that are listening to this podcast, are going to watch this game? What do we really expect? Because, like, last year, that was terrible.
Right.
That's no good. Nobody wants to see that.
Right.
Except Kansas fans. And I bet they'd like to see a better game.
Right.
So,
no kidding.
So tell me why this will be a better game.
So I think, look, Missouri's undefeated, and you touched on the strength of schedule, not great, but it's by design. It's a bunch of newcomers. It's an entirely different roster. They are older. They have guys with experience. They have guys that have won league championships. They have multiple guys that have been conference defensive players of the year in DeMarre Hodge and Trey Gomillion.
I like Gomillion.
Gomillion gives me some.
He's a JT Tiller,
that's
isn't
right.
he?
That's right.
You got a guy like a JT Tiller.
That's his role. DeMarre Hodge gives me some Cassius Robertson vibes.
Okay.
Elite shooter, 3-and-D guy. I think those guys have been really impressive because they've transitioned smoothly.
I like the Renner Award winner, Aiden Shaw from Kansas City.
Aiden Shaw, so athletic, so explosive, so much upside potential. Best athlete on the team by far. I think he's got a chance to really help this team and develop over the course of the year, but who knows where he's going to be in the second year, third year. The sky is the limit for Aiden Shaw. Great kid, too. I know you've had him on your show. I've talked to him several times. Great kid. Proud of him, especially being a Kansas City kid. It's great that he's at Mizzou. You look at Kobe Brown as a returner. Picked preseason first-team All-SEC. He's changed his body. He's had a little bit of a struggle here over the last few games. But if you talk about this team, Stephen, like in the unknown of this team, when they played at Wichita State, I thought that was kind of like their first test. It was their first true road game. And they find a way to win in overtime. They were down in the final 4-minute period, and they find a way to tie it and then win it in overtime. And they were 1 of 16 from 3 combined in second half and overtime. I mean, and they score, 88 points in that game? They're averaging over 90 a game right now. And I know some of that is against the competition. This team can score. They can shoot it. They play 9 guys. I think the rotation, they're deep. And the guys they bring off the bench, like they have a talented freshman in Aiden Shaw coming off the bench. Isaiah Mosley is the key for me. It goes back to Isaiah because he's been coming off the bench. He's their best shot creator by far. He's their most efficient player by far. He's excellent in pick and roll. If you talk about when you say, what is this team? They've done what they're supposed to do right now, right? They've won every game. They've won on the road. Now it's gut check time where we're going to find out a lot about what this team really is because they play Kansas, which is a huge game, obviously. The rivalry, it's at home. Then they get Illinois. They get bragging rights. Then they get Arkansas to start league play. Then they get Kentucky. It's just one game, big game after the other. They got UCF sprinkled in there as well.
And those rivalry games last year, Missouri was not competitive in any
at all.
And that put Konzo out the door. And so, you know me, and I'm like you, like any competitor. You don't want to say, hey, it's at least good enough to compete, to show that they've raised their level of competition. But it would be nice to be able to go out there and have good games against those 3 big opponents and show that they've at least bridged that gap from last year, because last year was embarrassing.
Well, and think of, going back to, like, I draw comparisons to Coach A and Dennis Gates of just pace and style of play. It's a much better product. Right, it's fun to watch. They're going to score. They got guys that can score. Nick Honor and Sean East as point guards have been really good. Nick Honor shooting 44% from 3. I think when you look at DeMoy and Trey and DeAndre Golston, they're bringing Coach Gates' philosophy, identity in terms of what they want the program to be.
Can they physically match up with Kansas?
I think when you look at Kansas, them being an entirely different team, they're playing small, right? I mean, they're starting KJ Adams at the 5.
So that's good for Mizzou.
So I think that benefits Mizzou, and I think what benefits Mizzou is the depth. I think Kansas can beat Mizzou because of their top 4 guys. Like Jalen Wilson is playing at an All-American level, 21-9, Mr. Consistent, more playmaking this year, absolute stud. He is the best player that's going to probably be on the floor in terms of what he's going to bring, rebounding, scoring, shooting. I think DeJuan Harris is one of the best point guards in the country. DeJuan always finds a way to win games. This storyline, Isaiah and DeJuan, right? Being Columbia guys and playing together in high school. DeJuan's return to Columbia. DeJuan's played in all these big moments. Final Four, national champion. I think had so many moments against North Carolina in the national championship game that won them the national championship in that second half of just how he defends. Probably one of the best assist to turnovers in ratios in college basketball. So the thing about Kansas, those guys, and then you add Grady Dick, who can shoot the lights out. He's over a 40% shooter from 3, 6'8". Mizzou's got to guard the 3-point line in this game.
And I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but like if scientists went into the lab and created a guy to look like he would play for Kansas, it would be Grady Dick. You just look at him, you don't even think, oh, he plays for Kansas.
That's right.
I don't know why I feel that way.
That's fair.
Just, right?
That's fair.
He looks like Kansas.
Right. Grady Sunrise Christian Academy, by the way. Luke Barnwell, the highlight program, like big-time program. So Wichita kid, born and raised. So he knows the rivalry. He knows the rivalry.
And this, I don't think there's really much debate here, but I want to get your thoughts on this. This game is so much more important to Missouri than Kansas.
For sure.
If Kansas wins, so what? We beat them last year. We're defending national champs. We're supposed to win. Ho-hum. If Kansas loses, so what? It's a non-con game. We're defending national champs. We're going to go win the Big 12 now. For Missouri, if Dennis Gates could beat Kansas, the defending national champs, in the first big home game of his of the regime that he's brought into Mizzou, and the confidence it would build, and all of a sudden you would say, "Oh, Missouri's a tournament team."
Right.
Now they're 10-0 with a win over Kansas. Right. This game is so, and even if they're competitive and it's a game in the final 5 minutes, you leave and say, okay, this record isn't empty. They're a good team. Maybe they can beat Illinois. Maybe they can beat Arkansas. This is so much more, and I'm not trying to diminish what it means to Kansas, but this is so much more important to this Missouri team for a number of reasons, right?
No question. Yeah, I think Kansas. It's a big road game. It's a hostile environment. They're going to learn a lot about themselves
too. They've done that.
They're still developing their bench, and what is MJ Rice? Is he going to help them down the road off the bench? Do they have their freshman bigs step up and play well? I'm curious to see how that plays out in this game if Bill Self changes some things and just what the personnel and the rotations look like. But for Missouri, there's no question. They win this game. It's such a feather in the cap for Dennis Gates in terms of, the guy's undefeated right now in his first year at Mizzou, and they haven't played anybody. They beat Wichita State on the road.
That might get them ranked if they win this game. That might
get them ranked for sure, absolutely.
And what would that crowd be like for the UCF game the following Saturday? Wow.
My thing is if they're competitive and in this game, and it's a game late, I still think that's a win. I still think that's a win for the program. And I think fans need to understand this is year one, and I'm already happy with what I'm seeing from Coach Gates. I've called a few of their games, how he coaches, his usage of timeouts, his ATOs, his ability to draw up plays, how he values analytics, how he values player efficiency rating. All these things I really value with what Coach Gates brings. I think he's got a great temperament. I think he's a great teacher. I've been to some practices where I like what he's doing. This is a team that he's put together in such a short amount of time. And look, I think Noah Carter's a big piece in this game. Of how does Kansas match up with Noah Carter and Kobe Brown? Like, I think there's some game plan strategy that I think Kansas has to answer for too. Like, Mizzou's got a tough test with DeWan of how they're going to, can they force some turnovers? Because Missouri is big on forcing turnovers, getting steals. They average over 20 assists per game. Missouri takes care of the ball. That's a big part of this game. The transition game, who takes care of the ball, the turnover matchup, that's a big part of this game. But man, if Mizzou wins this game, it's huge. It's just massive. And then you look, they got Illinois. Bragging rights, anything can happen. Missouri's not competitive last year, but I think Councilman Martin did a really good job in the bragging rights game. He had some huge wins against Illinois. Illinois win would be massive. Illinois just beat Texas, right? Like, there's some games here where it's all about opportunity. And Missouri's got a chance. If they win some of these games, great. But let's see if they can compete, be in games, because I think that's going to make league play. When you're watching a game on a Tuesday in February, you're going to be amped up to watch those games. If they're just going to be competitive in those games, I think they're going to pull some upsets this year. I just think with them, it's like modern day basketball and the NFL and what we're seeing in the NFL. Score, like offense, scoring fast, scoring quick.
Give the fans a reason to care.
Exact. Teams are going to score. There's a lot of talent from a college basketball perspective. There's a ton of returning talent within an NIL world. We saw a lot of guys. Jalen Wilson's one. Terrence Shannon's another one in Illinois, of guys that didn't keep their name in the draft and came back to school. Then you see the freshman class right now that is in college basketball and the start that a lot of these guys are off to. My goodness, it's across the board, and Grady Dick's one of those. There's a ton of talent. Isaiah Mosley is a returner and a transfer. He is a talented kid. There's so much talent in college basketball. It's a great thing of where the sport is at. And I think it's going to make it fun in two leagues like the Big 12 and SEC that are going to be highly competitive.
All right, so to wrap this up, and we've got so much more we'll talk about, and we're going to do this podcast a couple of times a month, and then from that point might increase it from there. But as we get march towards March and March Madness and talk about the NBA playoffs and everything that's going to come between now and the summer, Tell people again what this podcast is going to be all about. And I know you want to thank our friends at Charlie Hustle. By the way, charliehustle.com, or go down to the Plaza location. All these schools we talk about, you get the best gear from Charlie Hustle and represent the team that you love.
Yeah, big shout out to Chase McNulty and Greg Moore over at Charlie Hustle, who really saw the vision in this. They're huge sports fans. They're passionate about Kansas City, just incredible guys, and I think saw the value in what we're going to do. And what we're doing in this podcast is a basketball center podcast, right? We're going to focus on all things college basketball with our local schools, but then college basketball across the board. We're going to be talking about the NBA. You know, when we get into NBA playoffs and we get into my New Orleans Pelicans, they got some big games this weekend against the Suns. We're first in the West, huge matchups, playoff-type environments at Smoothie King. Really fired up about that this weekend. But we're going to cover it all. Women's basketball as well. We'll cover AAU. Obviously, we got to talk about transfer portal and NIL.
There are any great high school players in Kansas City?
High school,
talk to them, too.
Absolutely. And expect, too, some interviews. I'm really looking forward to bringing on coaches and players.
Mike Anderson's got to be at the
Mike
top of the
Anderson
list.
might be at the top of this list.
I'm going to talk to him about the elbow he threw into your rib and see if he remembers it the same way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Got to bring Coach A on. So it's going to be a ton of fun, and I'm thrilled to be working with you as well. I mean, you're the man of KC. What you do in this community for one, and then your talent just to be sharing the airwaves with you on a podcast. Because the hot mic I listen to, and it's big time. I love the hot mic. I love the hot mic. It's must listen pod. Shout out to Hot Mic.
That's right.
But
that's right.
On House of Hustle, we're going to dive into a lot of hoops. So this is where you want to be for basketball.
But Ben's laughing because you said a ton of fun. You look over at me like, why am I the ton of fun? I can be a ton of fun, though, on this podcast and Hot Mic with SSJ.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, man, for having me a part of this. You close the show. It's your show, man.
Oh, man. See, you had me, intro the show, and this is like, I feel like a fish out of water a little bit.
You're in the water now.
But hey, we'll connect here. We got one more podcast coming before the end of the month, so looking forward to talking more about it. We'll break down this Mizzou-Kansas game for sure, but we're also going to dive into some more storylines of just college basketball across the board. We'll get into our House of Hustle as well, a player with hustle. We're going to have a player of hustle every month.
You want to do that right now?
Let's do it.
Let's do the first one right now.
Let's do it.
That's how we'll end the show.
That's a great start.
Yeah, every month we're going to have a different player you want to highlight.
Yep.
Who's your House of Hustle Hustler of the Month?
So Adidas just signed this kid to an NIL deal, and I think this story. His name's Hansel Emmanuel, and I've known this kid for about 3 years. He is a hooper. He's 6'7", one arm. He plays basketball with one arm.
Wow.
And the dude plays with motor, toughness. You watch him play, and you forget that he's got one arm. I mean, it's insane what he does with the ball.
Where's he play?
I actually saw him in Chicago.
Okay.
Right now, he's playing at a Christian academy. So he's a senior right now, but he's going to be a freshman coming up next fall. And the kid is super talented. But what's wild is one arm. I mean, like, to be able to have like the ball handling he has, he can shoot the ball, he defends. It's really fun to watch. But you talk about the hustle, the toughness, no excuse type of kid, plays the game the right way. It's really fun to watch, and I've just been following him over the years, and I think he's got a bright future, and he's really talented, and he's gotten a good amount of offers as well. So just a kid that to keep in the back of your mind. So we're always going to highlight guys. You mentioned JT Tiller. Speaking of guys that could hustle and guys that could defend and guys that did the unselfish things, guys that did the little things that impacted winning, guys that were not about themselves. They were about their teams, and they really play a significant role. I mean, I think DeJuan Harris, another guy, all about hustle, all about the little things that impact winning. Very unselfish, blue collar guy. Doesn't want the exposure or the accolades. He just plays his game and does everything the right way. So that's going to be our highlight player with the House of Hustle.
Good pick for our first Hustler of the Month.
That's right. Well, Steven, thanks. Really, really appreciate it and looking forward to our next one.
All right, Mike. Until the next one, that's it for the House of Hustle, baby.